Don't let me freeze out here, human. I can work, I can love, just keep my children safe. The alien mother's last bargain.
The night was colder than usual. The wind screamed outside, carrying shards of ice that struck the metal walls of Ethan's small home. On Colony 9, winter was not a season, it was a death sentence. No one went outside unless they wanted to. Freeze solid. Ethan sat at his workbench, fixing a broken power coil. The soft hum of his heater was the only comfort in the silence. Then, a sound broke through, soft, hesitant. Knock, knock. He froze. No one should be at his door. At this hour. Not in this weather. The knocks came again, sharper this time. Whoever it was. They were desperate. Ethan slowly reached for the pistol under his table. Out here, far from the central dome, danger could come in many shapes. Hungry animals, thieves, or worse. He approached the door, his breath fogging in the cold air. Seeping through the frame, "Who's there?" he called. No answer. Just silence, broken only by the wind. He hesitated, then pressed the release switch. The metal door slid open with a hiss, and the storm reached in like an icy hand. Standing there was a woman, but not a human. Her tall frame was wrapped in a tattered cloak, her skin a faint silver blue that glimmered under the colony lights. Snow clung to her hair, which was braided with thin copper wires. In her arms were two small bundles, children, their tiny faces pale and trembling. Her eyes locked on his. They were deep violet, full of exhaustion and something else. A plea. "I will warm your bed, human," she said in a low, shaking voice. "My children need a father." Ethan's mind went blank. He had heard about her kind, the Viren. Proud, distant, never mixing with humans. And yet here she was, offering herself in the middle of the night. He scanned her quickly. She was shivering hard, lips almost blue. The children were worse. Wrapped in thin fabric, not meant for this deadly cold. "Get inside," he said finally. She hesitated, as if afraid he might close the door, then stepped in. The warmth of his heater reached them, but her hand still shook as she unwrapped the children. Ethan noticed their faces, large dark eyes, small ridges along their foreheads, features mixed between her alien species and something else. They clung to her, refusing to let go. "What's your name?" Ethan asked, locking the door behind them. She looked down. "Names are dangerous," she whispered. That answer made Ethan frown. "Dangerous?" She didn't reply. Instead, she looked at the heater like it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Her children crawled closer, holding out their little hands. To feel the warmth, Ethan fetched a blanket and draped it over them. "You came through the storm for this?" She nodded. "There was no choice." He crouched in front of her. "What are you running from?" Her eyes darted toward the window, scanning the shadows outside. She didn't answer, but the tremble in her voice grew as she finally said, "Hunters, they take widows. They take children." Ethan's stomach tightened. He knew what she meant. Debt gangs. The kind that roamed the edges of the colony, preying on the weak and unprotected. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small, broken necklace, a charm made of bone. "This was my husband's," she said quietly. "He died in the war. They said his debt is mine now." Her voice cracked. "They will sell me and my children." Ethan sat back, running a hand over his face. She had come to him for shelter, and was offering herself because she thought it was the only way he'd help. "You don't have to," he began, but she interrupted. Her voice firm despite the shaking. "I do. I have no credits. No food, no home. You have warmth. You have safety. I will give what I can." Ethan stared at her. There was pride in her, even in desperation. She wasn't begging, she was bargaining. He sighed, looking at the children, their small hands clutching the blanket like it was life itself. "I'm not going to trade for your life. You and your kids can stay here tonight. That's it." For the first time, her expression softened, but there was still fear in her eyes. One night is not enough. They will find us. Ethan was about to answer when something outside caught his attention, a faint crunch of boots in the snow. His instinct screamed at him. He moved to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to peek out. In the dim light of the street, shapes moved, tall, armored figures, their glowing visors scanning the area. The alien woman's eyes widened when she saw them. Her hand gripped his arm. "They're here," she whispered. Ethan looked at her, then at the door. He could hear the slow, deliberate footsteps drawing closer. The knocking returned, but this time, it wasn't gentle. It was a heavy, metallic thud. The pounding on the door was not a request, it was a warning. Each blow echoed through the small metal home like the heartbeat of a predator, closing in on its prey. Ethan's hand hovered over the pistol at his belt. His mind raced. These weren't random thieves. The way they moved, the timing. They knew exactly where to look. The alien woman clutched her children close, her violet eyes locked on the door. She didn't speak, but her fears spoke for her. "Is there another way out?" Ethan whispered. She shook her head, not without them seeing. The pounding stopped. Silence followed. Ethan's skin prickled. Silence was worse. It meant they were thinking. Planning. Then, a voice came from outside, distorted through a helmet. "Speaker, open up, human. You have something that belongs to us." Ethan glanced at the woman. She shook her head sharply, mouthing the word. No. The voice outside turned cold. "You have 5 seconds." Ethan acted fast. "There's a maintenance tunnel under the floor," he whispered, moving toward the corner. He pulled away a metal panel, revealing a narrow shaft. The woman didn't hesitate. She guided the children inside, their tiny feet making no sound. "Go," Ethan urged. She looked back at him. "You? I'll buy you time." Her eyes lingered on him for half a heartbeat longer. A silent question she didn't ask. Then she disappeared into the tunnel, pulling the hatch shut above her. The door shook again. This time it wasn't knocking. It was the sound of metal being cut. Sparks flew from the edges as a plasma torch hissed through the lock. Ethan grabbed his pistol and moved to the far side of the room, crouching low. He didn't plan to win a fight, just to distract them. With a final hiss, the door fell inward. 3 figures stepped through, tall and broad, their black armor reflecting the dim light. Their visors glowed red, scanning the room. "Where is she?" one demanded. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he fired a shot at the wall behind them, the blast sparking against metal. The sound drew their attention, giving him the moment he needed to dash toward the side exit. They followed. Good. He led them into the icy streets, his boots crunching over snow, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. Every step was a gamble. If they caught him, it was over for all of them. The storm bit at his face, but he kept moving, ducking between abandoned storage units and frozen pipes. He could hear them behind him, their heavy footsteps steady and relentless. Finally, he slipped into a narrow alley, pressing himself against the wall. He waited, counting his breaths. The footsteps grew louder, then passed right by. Ethan didn't waste a second. He doubled back toward his home. When he slipped inside, the hatch in the floor creaked open. The woman emerged, her children clinging to her. Her eyes scanned him quickly. No injuries, no blood. Relief softened her face for just a moment before she spoke. "You risked your life for strangers," she said quietly. Ethan shrugged. "Doesn't feel like the right night to watch someone freeze to death." She stared at him, something unreadable in her gaze. Then, finally she said, "My name is Lyra." It felt like more than an introduction. It was a gift, a piece of trust. Ethan nodded. "Lyra, we can't stay here. They'll come back." She looked toward the window, where faint red lights still moved in the distance. "They won't stop until they have me." Her voice trembled on the last word, but there was steel beneath it. She was afraid, yes, but she was also ready to fight. Ethan glanced at the children, their eyes wide and tired. "Then we'd better be gone before morning." For a moment, Lyra said nothing. Then she stepped closer, her voice low and steady. "If you help me, human, I will give you more than you ask for. My life, my loyalty, everything." Ethan didn't know why, but something in him believed her. And in that frozen, fragile moment, he made a decision that would change all of their lives. "Pack what you can carry," he said. "We leave now." Outside, the storm howled, but inside, 3 hearts beat faster, ready for the silent chase to begin. The wind screamed through the narrow streets of Colony 9, carrying flurries of razor-sharp ice. Ethan pulled his coat tighter, his breath fogging in the freezing air. Beside him, Lyra kept her children wrapped in her cloak, their small faces hidden. They moved quickly, but not too quickly. Running would leave tracks. Every step crunched faintly over the snow, a sound Ethan prayed the hunters wouldn't hear. Lyra kept glancing over her shoulder. "They will smell us," she whispered. Ethan frowned. "Smell us?" Her eyes met his, sharp in the dim light. "Their armor has scent trackers. Once they lock on, only a storm can hide us." Ethan looked up. The storm was strong, but not strong enough. From somewhere behind them came a faint hum, the sound of a hovering scout drone. "Keep moving," Ethan said, his voice low but firm. They slipped through the side alleys, past abandoned storage crates and rusting machinery. The lights of the main colony dome glowed faintly in the distance, but heading there would be suicide. Too many eyes, too many patrols. Lyra's children whimpered softly, and she hushed them with a quiet hum. It was a strange, alien melody, but it seemed to calm them instantly. Ethan led them toward the industrial sector, where old mining shafts tunneled beneath the ice. If they could reach the forgotten maintenance routes, they might vanish. But fate didn't plan to make it easy. The faint hum behind them grew louder. Then, a burst of red light swept across the snow, scanning. "Down!" Ethan hissed. They pressed themselves against the side of a frozen wall as the drone floated past, its sensors glowing. For a breathless moment, Ethan swore it would spot them. But then a gust of wind threw up a swirl of ice, blinding its scanners. The drone drifted away. Lyra exhaled slowly. "The ice saved us." Ethan nodded, but he knew luck wouldn't last. Minutes later, they reached the mouth of an old mining shaft. The entrance was half buried in snow, a rusted metal sign warning of collapse. Perfect. No one would think to search here. He helped Lyra inside, the children clinging to her as they descended into darkness. Ethan's flashlight flickered over damp walls lined with old support beams. "Stay close," he warned. "Some of these tunnels are unstable." They moved deeper, the sound of the storm fading above. For a moment, Ethan thought they were safe. Then Lyra stopped, her head tilting. "Do you hear that?" Ethan listened, faint at first, then clearer. A metallic clank. 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 His stomach sank. The sound was coming from inside the tunnel. Before they could react, a shape emerged from the shadows ahead, massive, hunched and glowing faintly with blue light. It wasn't a hunter. It was something older. The creature's skin shimmered like ice, its eyes burning with an unnatural glow. Lyra pulled her children behind her, whispering something in her native tongue. Ethan raised his pistol, but Lyra grabbed his arm. "No, it is a guardian." "A what?" "An ancient protector of this place," she said quickly. "It will kill intruders. Unless..." She stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear as she began to sing the same haunting melody she'd used to calm her children. The sound echoed through the tunnel, soft but commanding, the creature's glowing eyes fixed on her. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the guardian stepped aside, revealing a narrow passage behind it, and a faint glow far in the distance. Ethan stared. "What's back there?" Lyra's voice was almost a whisper. "Something That can save us, or destroy this whole colony. Ethan glanced back toward the tunnel they'd come from. Faint red light now danced there. The hunters had found their trail. There was no choice. Go, Ethan said, motioning her forward. We'll take our chances with whatever's ahead. And as the four of them disappeared into the glowing depths, the Guardian stepped back into the shadows, waiting for whoever dared follow. The tunnel narrowed, forcing Ethan to crouch as they moved toward the strange light. The air grew warmer with every step, heavy with a faint metallic scent, like rain hitting old copper. Behind him, Lyra's children clung to her cloak, their wide eyes reflecting the glow ahead. The sound of the hunter's boots in the distance was faint now, but too close to ignore. Finally, the passage opened into a vast cavern. Ethan froze at the sight. The walls shimmered with a strange mineral, veins of gold and crystal pulsing, faintly like living veins. At the cavern's center stood a massive structure, a ring of black stone surrounding a core of molten orange light. It radiated heat, pushing back the cold that ruled the surface. That's impossible, Ethan whispered. Lyra stepped forward slowly, her gaze fixed on the glowing core. No, it is old. Older than your species. My husband, he was its guardian. Ethan turned to her. Guardian? Of what? A heater? She gave a faint, sad smile. Not a heater. A heart. This is the heart of the deep. It keeps the frost from swallowing this land completely. Without it, the colony will freeze within days. Ethan's gaze swept the cavern. Pipes and vents built into the stone looked ancient, but some have been crudely modified with newer technology. Someone's been here recently. Lyra's expression darkened. The hunters. They want to take the core, dismantle it, sell the energy for profit. If they succeed. Her voice trailed off, but Ethan didn't need her to finish. He could already picture it. The colony buried in snow. Thousands dead. A small sound broke the moment. Lyra's younger child, tugging on her cloak and pointing toward the far wall. There, half buried in ice, was a skeleton, not human, not fully Viren either. It wore tattered armor marked with strange symbols. Lyra knelt beside it, her hand brushing the frozen bones. My husband, she whispered. Ethan looked away, giving her the moment. But then his eyes caught something. Fresh footprints in the frost, leading toward the far side of the cavern. Lyra, he said quietly, we're not alone. Her head snapped up. A sudden burst of red light filled the cavern as 3 armored hunters emerged from the shadows, their weapons raised. One of them pointed at the core. Step away from it. Ethan stepped in front of Lyra and the children without thinking. You want it, you'll have to go through me. The lead hunter laughed, the sound distorted through his helmet. Gladly. The first shot fired, a beam of plasma that seared the rock beside Ethan's head. Lyra shouted something in her language, and the ground beneath the hunters cracked with a deep rumble. Steam hissed from the vents in the cavern floor, clouding the air. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand. We can't win this fight here. She glanced at the glowing core. If they take it, everything dies. Then we make sure they can't, Ethan said, his eyes darting toward the support pillars holding up the cavern's roof. A plan formed in his mind, one that would save the heart, but might trap them inside. Behind them, the hunters advanced, their red visors cutting through the steam. Ethan tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. Stay close. This is going to get ugly. The cavern exploded with noise. Plasma bolts sizzled through the steam, searing chunks of crystal from the walls. The molten core pulsed brighter, like it sensed the danger. Ethan fired 2 quick shots, not to hit, but to force the hunters to take cover. Lyra, get the kids behind that pillar. She didn't argue. Wrapping her children in her cloak, she sprinted across the cavern floor, weaving between the heat vents. Steam hissed up in thick clouds, hiding her from view. The lead hunter's voice boomed through the chaos. "You can't protect them, human. Stand aside." Ethan ignored him. He wasn't here to stand aside. He was here to make sure no one left. With the heart dot, he spotted the weakest support beam in the cavern, half cracked from years of neglect. If it came down, it could block the hunter's path to the core. Maybe for good. He sprinted toward it, plasma bolts chasing his heels. The heat from the vents burned his skin, but he pushed through, slamming his shoulder into the beam's side. It shuddered, but didn't fall. "Come on." He grunted, firing at the joint where it met the rock. Sparks burst out, and the entire cavern groaned. The hunters realized what he was doing. "Stop him!" The leader roared. One charged forward, but before he could reach Ethan, Lyra appeared from the steam, her hand gripping a shard of glowing crystal like a blade. She slashed it across the hunter's arm, and the armor hissed as it melted under the strange mineral's heat. The hunter staggered back, screaming. Lyra's eyes burned, not with fear this time, but with something primal. "You will not take my children!" She shouted in her own language. Ethan slammed his shoulder into the beam one last time. With a deafening crack, it gave way, crashing down in a spray of rock and crystal shards. The hunters on the other side cursed, cut off from the core, but the collapse had a price. The ceiling above them shuddered, sending chunks of ice crashing to the ground. "We have to move," Ethan shouted. He grabbed Lyra's hand, scooped up one of the children, and ran for the exit. The cavern behind them began to collapse, molten light flashing through the cracks like lightning. They burst into the tunnels just as a shockwave of heat blasted out from the chamber, throwing them forward into the snow outside. For a moment, everything was silent except for the hiss of settling ice. Then, far behind them, came the muffled roar of the cavern sealing itself, the heart of the deep safe. For now, Ethan rolled onto his back, gasping for breath, snowflakes melting on his sweat-soaked face. Lyra knelt beside him, her children. Clutching her tightly, You saved it," she said softly. "You saved all of us." He shook his head. "Not yet. They're still out there." Lyra's gaze hardened. "Then we keep running." "But you will not run alone, human. Not anymore." Ethan didn't have time to reply. The sound of engines echoed in the distance. The hunters had regrouped, and this time, they weren't hiding. He pushed himself up, gripping his pistol. "Looks like our night's not over yet." Snow began to fall harder, thick flakes swirling in the wind. Somewhere in the blizzard, red visor lights cut through the white. The chase had only just begun. Snow whipped around them in wild spirals, turning the world into a white maze. The storm was growing worse. Good for hiding, deadly for traveling. Ethan pushed forward through knee-deep drifts, one arm shielding his face, the other holding the smallest child close. Lyra was right behind him, clutching her older child, her eyes constantly scanning the swirling darkness for those red visor lights. Every so often, a faint mechanical hum broke through the howling wind. The hunters. Drones sweeping the storm with invisible sensors. "We need shelter," Ethan said over the storm. "There is one place," Lyra replied, her voice barely audible. "An outpost. Abandoned after the war." Ethan didn't like the sound of abandoned. It usually meant unsafe. But the cold was starting to seep into his bones, and the children were trembling violently. They had no choice. Lyra led the way, guiding them between jagged ice spires until a shadow appeared in the white. A squat, half-buried building, its roof crushed in on one side. Inside, the air was stale but warmer than outside. Ethan kicked the snow from his boots and quickly barricaded the door with a rusted beam. Lyra laid the children on an old blanket she'd found in the corner, wrapping them tight. Their breathing was shallow but steady. Ethan sank down beside them, exhaustion pressing on his shoulders. His hands were raw from the cold, and every muscle ached. But his mind was still on the hunters. Lyra sat across from him, the flickering light of a small portable heater painting her silver blue skin in warm tones. For the first time since they met, her shoulders weren't rigid with fear. "You risked your life twice tonight," she said softly. Ethan shook his head. "3 times, if you count agreeing to let you in." That earned the faintest hint of a smile, but it faded quickly. "I offered myself to you that night because I thought it was the only way to keep my children alive. I did not believe a human would help for any other reason." Ethan looked at her, meeting her violet eyes. "Then you've been around the wrong humans." Silence hung between them, broken only by the wind outside. Lyra reached over and placed her hand over his, a gesture small but deliberate. "If we survive this, I will not forget what you have done, and neither will they." She glanced at her. "Sleeping children. They lost their father to war. I will not let them lose the man who saved them." Ethan swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. "I'm not their father." "Not yet," she said quietly. Something in the way she said it made his chest tighten, not out of fear, but out of a strange warmth that felt dangerous in the middle of a frozen wasteland. The warmth didn't last long. A sharp ping from the corner made them both freeze. Ethan's eyes shot toward the cracked window. Through the swirling snow outside, a red light moved closer. Then another, and another. Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "They found us." Ethan stood, gripping his pistol, his jaw tight. "Then they're not taking you. Any of you." Lyra rose too, her eyes hard. "We fight together." Ethan glanced back at the children, sleeping under the blanket. His voice was low but firm, a promise, not just words. "No matter what happens tonight, they will wake up with someone watching over them." Lyra nodded. "A father's promise?" He met her gaze. "Yeah, a father's promise." Outside, the red light stopped moving. The hunters were waiting, letting the storm thin before they struck. Inside, Ethan checked his weapon and braced for the Kenko fight. Not for survival this time, but for a future he hadn't known he wanted until now. The storm had eased by morning, but the snow outside was littered with fresh boot tracks, deep, heavy prints circling the outpost like wolves waiting for their prey. Ethan stood by the door, pistol in hand, his breath slow and steady. Beside him, Lyra adjusted the straps of a scavenged rifle, her movements sharp and precise. The children still slept under the blanket, their small bodies curled together for warmth. Ethan had no intention of letting them wake up to gunfire. "They'll come through the main entrance," Lyra whispered. "It's the only side not buried in snow." Ethan's lips curved into a thin smile. "Good, let them." When the first metallic thud hit the door, Ethan was already moving. He kicked over the fuel canister he'd placed earlier, its contents spilling across the floor near the entrance. A second later, the hunters breached, 3 black armored figures storming inside. Weapons raised. Ethan fired a single shot, not at them, but at the canister. The spark met the fuel, and a wall of flame roared up between the hunters and the rest of the room. They staggered back, their visors glowing red through the smoke. Lyra moved with deadly precision, firing through the gaps in the flames. One hunter fell, armor sparking. The leader snarled through his helmet speaker. "This ends now, human." "Yeah," Ethan muttered. "It does." He charged forward through the fading fire, slamming into the leader and driving him into the wall. The two struggled, boots slipping on melting snow. Lyra finished the last standing hunter with a clean shot, then rushed to help Ethan. Together, they forced the leader to the ground. His visor cracked under the impact, revealing pale, cold eyes that still burned with hate. "You can kill me," the leader spat, "but more will come." Ethan's grip tightened on his pistol. Then he pulled it back. "No, you're going to carry a message. Stay away from them. Or next time, I won't hesitate." The leader sneered, but when Lyra aimed her rifle at his head, his expression shifted. Without another word, he stumbled out into the snow, vanishing into the storm's remnants. Silence fell. Lyra lowered her weapon, her breath ragged. "It's over." Ethan looked at her, really looked. The proud alien woman who had knocked on his door in desperation now stood beside him, unbroken, her children safe behind her. He walked to them, kneeling by the blanket. The youngest stirred, blinking up at him. "Is it morning?" The child asked softly. Ethan smiled. "Yeah, and it's safe now." Lyra came to stand beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You kept your promise." He looked up at her, his voice quiet but steady. "I meant it." Weeks later, snow still fell on Colony 9, but inside the small home on the edge of the settlement, warmth filled every corner. Ethan's once silent house now echoed with the sound of children's laughter. Heater hummed. The table was set for 4. Outside the window, the endless white stretched across the horizon, but inside, there was life. Lyra stood at the stove, her hair braided neatly, her violet eyes softer now. She glanced over at Ethan, who was fixing a broken toy for the youngest. "You work too much," she teased. He grinned. "You talk too much." The children giggled. Lyra walked over, placing a hand on his cheek, a gesture she'd never dared before. "You are their father now, Ethan. And my home." Ethan covered her hand with his own, feeling the truth in her words. "Then let's make sure they never lose either." Outside, the storm raged on. But for the first time in a long time, it didn't matter. This winter, no one in this house would sleep alone.